There's no secret formula for better customer service, but there is the all-new Service Hub from HubSpot, bringing service and support together in one powerful platform so you can deliver the best experiences possible and free up a rep's time with an AI-powered help desk. All so you can easily support and grow your customer base. Secrets out, everybody. Service Hub is a game changer. Visit HubSpot.com/service to learn more.
If you're a child of the 80s or 90s, you almost certainly remember Sunny Delight. It was everywhere. The orange juice that tasted like liquid sunshine and burned a little bit as it went down your throat. The juice took over drink coolers and televisions everywhere, partly because of how successful its ads were.
We got some soda, OJ, purple stuff, Sunny Delight. What's in this? Tastes like orange and tangerine. Yeah, and lime. Some healthy junk too. Whoa. What are you doing? There's what?
Problem, guys?
No. Way to be Mr. Jackson. Come on. Yes,
Sunny Delight, the good stuff kids go for.
I want some more.
But back in the 90s, a health scandal sent Sunny Delight spinning. The orange stuff happened to turn a little girl orange. And that scandal quickly became the stuff of urban legend. But was it real? We set out to discover if it really happened. I'm Mark Dent.
And I'm Katherine Laidlaw. You're listening to the Hustle Daily Show, the weekend version. And today we're going to talk about how Sunny Delight conquered the juice market and how a scandal derailed that success.
Okay, Katherine, so long before this scandal, Sunny Delight started out pretty far back. How did Sunny Delight come to fruition?
So Sunny Delight actually came about back in the 1960s. In 1963, it was created by a pair of Florida dads who wanted to offer their kids something tastier to drink. Sunny Delight never explicitly called itself healthy, but it definitely emphasized that it was made in Florida and that it was fortified with vitamins like vitamin A and vitamin C that kids needed for a balanced diet. And it wasn't until the 1980s and then in the early 90s that the popularity really popped off.
So Sunny Delight never explicitly said it was orange juice. They were kind of presenting themselves, if not explicitly, implicitly, as a orange juice related beverage.
There was definitely sort of a healthful valence to the drink. It marketed itself for sure in its television commercials and its labeling as sort of a busy parent's dream. This was something healthy that you could give to your kids that they wanted to drink and they were excited about. And that was ultimately good for them.
Like, how big are we talking? How big did Sunny Delight get once it did sort of reach its prime?
Right. So in 2000, and this is after the scandal that we'll talk about in a second, but Sunny Delight's US sales figures hit $314 million. So while that didn't compete with the $3.5 billion grocery store sales of orange juice itself, definitely was a huge, huge number. And after its launch in the UK, it actually became the third most popular drink in that country behind Coke and Pepsi.
Oh, wow.
But one strategy that they employed that really bolstered their sort of healthy impression that I found really interesting was they insisted that the drink be kept in the coolers, the refrigerators, next to the orange juice rather than on the shelf next to the cans of pop or the more shelf-stable juice. And it didn't need to be refrigerated to still be drinkable, but it definitely gave it sort of an air of being healthier and more sort of fruit-based than it actually was. It was mostly water and corn syrup.
All right. So it was this pretty big drink, $700 million a year, give or take, as big as anything other than Coke and Pepsi in the UK. But it was in the UK where things kind of took a turn for Sunny Delight. What exactly happened?
So just after Christmas in 1999, which I don't know if you remember this, but 1999 is right on the cusp of Y2K.
Oh, I remember. I remember being scared out of my mind for months. Just kidding, but maybe a little bit, yeah.
Right? The world was supposed to end, but we made it through somehow. But just after Christmas, in a tiny seaside town in Wales, a doctor reported that he had seen a 5-year-old patient at the hospital. He was a pediatrician. He said that she had come in with her mom and that her skin was orange. And after talking to the pair a little bit, he determined that the culprit was Sunny Delight. This girl was drinking about 1.5 liters of Sunny Delight a day.
Wow.
And because Sunny Delight contains beta-carotene, that's the sort of vitamin distillation that you'd see in carrots or sweet potatoes, she was getting way, way beyond, like more than 4 times the recommended daily amount for a kid her age. And so it had turned her skin a tinge of orange, and she made it to the ER. But once this story broke, it really traveled. It crossed the ocean and made it into the news in US newspapers. And it was around a time where I think there was a lot of societal fear and uncertainty.
Yeah. I mean, in Y2K, potential apocalypse, and people are turning orange. I mean, it all kind of lines up.
The world has gone completely topsy-turvy.
Right. And it was a tabloid story, though, frankly. It did kind of travel all over, but it kind of originated in the British tabloids, which are rather aggressive and sometimes not always of 100% factual information. So when you started on this story, were you skeptical?
So, yeah, as a kid of the 80s, which I'm outing myself here, but I remember hearing about this story and just kind of laughing about it. Like it became a bit of an urban legend or part of the ether where you're like, oh yeah, Sunny Delight, like drink too much and it's going to turn you orange. And then I sort of stopped to think like, okay, wait. And as I was reading in the archive, I realized there were no names of this girl, which wasn't super unusual, but her parents were never named. There were no identifying details at all. There were no photos, and I couldn't find anything but one quote from this doctor in Wales in, as you say, a British tabloid article. And so that did make me skeptical. And I sort of thought, well, what if this is one of those things that came about right around the internet really taking off and sort of took on a life of its own, but this is a broken telephone situation?
Right. So then what did you do? How did you go about trying to figure out if it was legit?
So I started reaching out to industry experts, and I spoke to a gentleman who is the editor and publisher of Beverage Digest, which has been a trade magazine that's covered the industry for a long time. And he had some things to say about Sunny Delight and sort of its marketing practices and how it had presented as healthful when, in fact, it wasn't. But when I asked him about the scandal, he said, oh yeah, that's one of those stories that kind of comes up every few years because it's one of the more unique stories in the industry. I'd be really surprised if that was true. And I thought, okay, so I'm not the only one who's a little bit skeptical of this, you know? He said, oh yeah, there's always some story in the UK of so-and-so drank 800 gallons of Coke and here's what happened. And he just sort of brushed it off as maybe a figment of, you know, an overexcited reporter's imagination. And so I sort of started trying to dig a little bit deeper. I reached out to a film producer who I knew through various media reports was also looking for the girl who would be in her 20s now. Right. He didn't respond. I sent notes to the primary schools in the town called Ryle, where she grew up. Didn't hear back from them. I went down some Reddit rabbit holes. A commenter who claimed to know her said she'd received a substantial payout from Procter & Gamble, which was the company that owned Sunny Delight at the time. That commenter didn't respond to my DM. Eventually, I reached a teacher at the local high school who'd been a teacher there.
And so you went on Facebook to find some of these local Wales people?
Yes. So there's a really active Ryle community group. So I threw it out to the residents who were members of that group, and the responses were so interesting. One woman said that, well, she remembered the story. What she remembered more clearly was how excited everyone in the town got when the SunnyD reps came to the grocery stores and that there were lineups and people were guzzling this juice like they had never had a drink before.
Man, Ryle, Wales, and SunnyD. Who'd have thunk it?
Who knew? I was impressed that Sunny Delight was sending sales reps so far afield. Another woman said, you know, this girl has always chosen to remain anonymous and probably wants to keep it that way. Another woman accused me of running a scam of some kind. I'm not sure what she thought I was selling by asking for people's memories of this situation, but that sort of overtook the thread for a little while. Eventually, I tracked down the doctor, who was the only person named in any of the footage of this whole kerfuffle. He still works as a pediatrician in Wales. I emailed him several times, and when I didn't hear back, I tracked down a phone number for him in a church bulletin that his wife writes in their sort of little town.
Okay, wow. So a church bulletin in their small town included this doctor who may hold the truth to one of the great secrets of humanity, and you found it in a church bulletin.
That's right. And I was poised there with my phone thinking this could be the moment. I could blow this whole thing open. And when I called, it went straight to voicemail. And I left a message. So that was anticlimactic. I left a couple of messages after that, but never got a response. And so I ended up reaching out to the longtime CEO of SunnyD, who no longer works there, and asking him if he would at least confirm or deny that this story was real. Would not confirm or deny it. Simply said that that story predated his time on SunnyD.
Which I find impossible to believe that, he wouldn't know the answer to that. I feel like if you become the CEO of SunnyD, that's not the first thing you ask. Just like if you become president of the US, you ask what happened at Area 51,
He is correct semantically in the sense that he became CEO of SunnyD a couple of years after this all shook down. However, he was a senior vice president at Procter & Gamble before that and would have overseen SunnyD as part of his portfolio. So it's almost certain that he knows the answer to this question and didn't want to relay it. And so eventually, I was sort of thinking okay, maybe there's just no way to find out without getting on a plane to rural Wales. And that just probably isn't going to be something the company is going to feel is in the public interest enough.
I mean, come on. I think it clearly should be. But okay, yeah. So then was there anything that you were able to do to really figure out if this is, real or not?
So I continued my archival research and I started listening to old clips of the BBC. And I came across an audio clip from Dr. Duncan Cameron from back in 2003 on something called Money Program. And that seemed the closest thing to proof that I could find.
We took some blood samples to check for the beta-carotene levels, and they were enormously elevated. They were some of the highest levels that had been recorded in the reference laboratory in Birmingham. This is not a dangerous situation. The clear explanation for her symptoms was the excessive intake of SunnyD.
So that was the most definitive thing that I was able to find. It does not make sense to me that a doctor would risk their credibility by going on the BBC and confirming that this circumstance actually occurred.
To concoct a story about SunnyD, of all things.
Of all things. And so I think we can, as close to definitively as possible, say that this urban legend has its roots in truth. But the only person who can definitively confirm that we know of is this doctor. So Dr. Cameron, if you're listening, hit me up.
Yes, we want to know. We want to know. All right, but so what's gone on with SunnyD? I mean, it still exists as far as I know, but clearly not the behemoth that it was pre-Orange Girl. So what's the company up to lately?
So after the scandal, the sales figures for SunnyD really took a hit, eventually sort of being reduced to about half of what they once were. The company changed hands a couple of times from private equity firm to private equity firm. They launched a smoothie line to try and keep up with the health and wellness trends as they were changing in the US. And then also to sort of distance themselves from this health scandal. It's notoriously hard for brands to come back from a scandal that is health related. Research suggests there's very little a brand can actually do once they've endured a scandal like this. And actually, most recently, what SunnyD has been up to is they launched a vodka seltzer line, which to me seems like the smartest thing they could do. That's an expanding area of the industry.
Yeah.
And they're really harnessing what I see as their strongest brand asset, which is nostalgia, is really sort of taking us older millennials back to that time where SunnyD was the sort of snack you wanted to have with whatever you were going to eat when you came home from school, right? It was like the thing that all the cool kids' parents kept in their fridges. And so the idea that it was already being used as a mixer by people of our generation, the idea of launching a vodka seltzer line makes so much sense. And it's actually done reasonably well. People seem to like it.
I almost think they should reintroduce orange-tinged people into their marketing, perhaps. Taking this sort of, likely true, as you found, urban legend and trying to capitalize on it now through that vodka seltzer.
Lean in. Really, go full bore. Let's all be orange. That sounds so cheerful.
I agree. Okay. Well, there it is. So the SunnyD girl is, in fact, most likely true. And if we get a call from a doctor in Wales, perhaps we'll have a sequel to this episode one day. But for now, that's going to do it for us. So thank you, everybody, for tuning into the Hustle Daily Show. We're a proud part of the HubSpot podcast network. Our editor today is Robert Hartwig, and our executive producer is Darren Clark. We have a lot more tech and business coverage in our newsletter. So if you're not subscribed, please go get signed up at thehustle.co/email, and we will see you tomorrow.
Hey, everybody, I got a great podcast to tell you about. It's called Truth, Lies, and Work, and it's brought to you by the HubSpot Podcast Network, the audio destination for business professionals. On this show, you can join husband and wife team Al and Leanne Elliott as they dispel myths, impart wisdom, and answer all your questions about finding, keeping, and motivating great people. They actually just did an episode with John Smith, who is the manager and agent of famous Argentinian soccer player Diego Maradona. He talks about in this episode how he was able to manage the global superstar, athlete, celebrity that Maradona is and was. It's a great listen. You better get out there and check it out. And you can listen to Truth, Lies, and Work wherever you get your podcasts.